Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 378. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, uh, and Gail from Communities Digital News and NY Fights. Excuse me, Daniel from 4 Boxing News, Indian Scriber. What's going on, lady and gent?
Here for another week. Here after another big fight weekend, Mexican Independence Day weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Boxing Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, site, discussing all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the site page, the blog page, however you want to put it, it's the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us with questions, thoughts, suggestions, etc., you can do so. P4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you will find links to where to check us out, where to catch us all over the social media realm, the links to the YouTube channel, the links to the Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, IG page, also links to where to catch us on podcast platforms, anything that's RSS fed distributed, uh, be it Anchor, be it Google Podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Spotify, anywhere and everywhere, but in between, we're just about all over the place right now. Um, Links to where you also on the page, links to where you can donate. I got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Let donation be your best nation. If you're checking us out live on YouTube, make sure you hit that like button. Also, make sure you subscribe to the show as well. Help the overall algorithms and get us closer to being monetized. And last but not least, uh, on the site, Pound for Pound Box Report site, please check out the links to my link to Beachbody on Demand. If you're looking to get your health and wellness game up, if you are looking to get your body right, your health and wellness goals together, please check out Beachbody on Demand. So many platforms for any suitable interest. Whether you're looking to lift weights exclusively, please check out Lift 4 or the new program Lift More. If you're looking for a program to really challenge yourself, take your fitness game goals to a whole another level, I suggest you check out 6 weeks of the work. The P90X and the Insanity Asylum series, they still hit. Ladies, for the ladies, you can check out any program you want, but Bar Blend, Morning Meltdown, uh, Bring Your Own Body, various programs for that ladies would love as well. If you're looking for a boxing specific, let me take that back. That's kind of sexist because you can do 6 weeks of the work, you can do Live For, you can do any and all programs as much as you wish on Beachbody on Demand. Um, if you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 rounds, 6 week program, workouts 5 days a week, 3 of those days consisting of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week devoted to weightlifting / resistance work. At the very least, take advantage of the 14-day free trial, and with that, for 14 days, you get free access. You get exclusive access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand for free. So please check out Beachbody on Demand to get your health and wellness game together. Let's get going. Recapping the fights this weekend. What Not that much on the docket, since there was one fight that kind of took most of the air out of the room, and that's of course the trilogy that took place at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Um, Canelo Alvarez, Gennady Golovkin, they did it for a third time. I'm going to you, Gail, since you were in attendance covering the fights for NY Fights and Communities Digital News, right? Um, their first fight in 2017, September, back and forth, one of the fights of the year, maybe the fight of the year for many. The fight ended in a draw. Uh, I had Golovkin slightly winning by a point on my personal card. They ran it back the following year, September 2018. Canelo, this time, he won I believe, by split decision. And for me, when we talked about this show last week, I felt it was a trend, right? The first fight, Canelo did a lot of boxing, and in that fight moved around a lot. The second fight, he step to Golovkin. For me, I think in that first fight, he 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 knew that he can take Triple G's punch, and because of that, as well as the fact he was dealing with a lingering knee injury, he was more comfortable standing in the pocket, fighting in more of a tight circle. Uh, um, was more on the front foot in that rematch, and in the 4 years since their second fight in September 2018, I felt that Canelo, at the very least, he's either stayed the same or gotten better, while Golovkin has slowed down. Many people talked about that he was on the decline in the aftermath of his unification win over Rhoda Murata in April. And with him moving up in weight, a lot of people felt that he was the underdog. And it kind of turned, and it really turned out that way, Gail. Canelo got off to a hot start. Golovkin was slow on the trigger. He stayed slow on the trigger for most of the fight. He had a brief moment in round 9 and 10, but overwhelmingly, Canelo had his way with Golovkin in the same way I felt that Dimitri Bivol had his way with Canelo in Canelo's last outing in May. I only gave Canelo 2 rounds, maybe. I only gave Golovkin, excuse me, 2 rounds, maybe. Overwhelming win by Canelo Alvarez. Your thoughts?
I also just gave him 2 rounds in the fight. The scorecards, yeah, were a bit of head scratcher. Now, clearly, the judges are sitting on the apron and privy to things that even a few yards back you're not privy to. But damn, really? And you had to wonder after the end of the fight if the judges weren't trying like hell to throw Golovkin a bone to atone for the wrong they did to him in the first fight, which clearly he won and was denied with the draw. But you can't do makeup games like that in boxing. It doesn't work that way. Everything starts fresh with the opening bell. And this fight was overcooked. I'm going to borrow the language of my good colleague, Marquise Johns at nyfights.com. It's like those leftovers. You intended to eat them. The first serving was really good the night it was all fresh. And then you put the leftovers in the refrigerator and, oh man, you don't really get to them as fast as you intended. And you finally pull it out and think, ah, damn, I don't want this to go to waste. I got to eat it. It's not really that good. It's age.
Golovkin was like a cookie that's gone stale.
I'll tell you, yes, little freezer burn, just, ugh. We really had hoped for a banger, that the bad blood they seemingly were showing each other the last few years would all boil up in the ring. And whatever they did have left on either end, they would just absolutely empty the tank. And if that was Golovkin emptying the tank, he's done. He's just, Father Time is undefeated. We saw Father Time win that fight in a lot of ways. Golovkin was clearly the winner. The one saving grace of the fight was the outcome was not in dispute at all. The scorecards being that close were in dispute. Exactly the opposite of the problems we've had in the other fights. So go figure. But the fight was so underwhelming that the only word I have to describe it is underwhelming. The fans still cheered for Canelo. It was a highly partisan crowd, even more than the first two fights. It was almost entirely a Canelo crowd. They wanted to cheer. They were going to cheer no matter what was going on. There was far more action in the stands by the excited fans than there was in the ring. So it's over. And I think, to the astonishment of many people, the two warmly, sincerely embraced after the fight, appear to have respect for each other after all they've gone through together. And the only people that really know what it's been like all this time is Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. So in that way, like many fighters have been over the years, they're bonded together forever in history because of this series of fights. But it certainly ended with a whimper and not a bang.
Is your impressions of the fight, Daniel, pretty much are they in line with what Gail, in particular her last appointment, it went in a whimper instead of a bang?
In many ways, yes, because of the venom that was spit, even up to the hype videos where Golovkin and Canelo were walking to the ring. They still had a little bit of like that bad blood coming in, but two things have probably happened in this. One, we now know that Canelo was going into the fight injured at least. There was some damage to the left hand. And two, Golovkin also admitted this in the post-fight press conference. They made a tactical error in trying to be tentative in Golovkin's team because more than likely, Golovkin probably hoped that Canelo, wanting to prove that the loss to Bivol was a fluke, wanting to really knock Golovkin out just how mad he made him, would not box. He would just go in guns blazing and then leave him wide open for a good straight right. That didn't happen. And the scorecard disparity was just, that one was pretty bad. Like, you 116, 112, that's being generous that night. I think you could probably own, me personally, I gave Golovkin the first round and the ninth round. Everything else, he was either too tentative and let Canelo take control, or Canelo was landing the better combinations. And it could be a situation where we literally did see a man become old overnight, or a man was just hoping that another man would let his anger control it and then dictate the terms of the fight. But you saw how it happened at the end of the day. They both hugged, they respected each other. And I guess this is one of the reasons why when this fight was announced, there wasn't really a lot of fervor from fans, because we figured that this would be the result, that it would be a tactical fight. Both these men know each other very well in the ring. That's what happens when you have fights like that go the distance in between. And at this stage, especially with Canelo not having his left hand at full strength, which takes away his body shot, his best weapon, there was not going to be a knockout because Golovkin has one of the best chins in the sport in the last 20 years. So it is a little bit sad, but it's, I think, what a lot of people expected more likely in the end. We just probably hoped that the anger would flow, but these are two smart men, two smart fighters, and this was going to be the result.
It was like Triple G early in the fight knew he didn't have it, tried to plug along, figured at one point to let's give it a last push to see if I can come up with something. Once that didn't work, it was like, okay, it is this night. It is what it is. Let me just go the distance here, and the simmering beef that that y'all mentioned, it's no longer there. He was resigned to defeat. While Canelo, he knew he had the advantage early and just basically did what he had to do. He didn't do anything spectacular, in my opinion. He just a professional performance, and yeah, just a professional performance overall. Let's talk future here for both men. Um, let's start with the winner here, Canelo. Um, it is expected that at some point he's going to fight Dimitri Bivol in a rematch. Afterwards, he talked about he acknowledged or disclosed that he's been dealing with a bad left hand. Right, he's going to take some time off for that to heal, possibly surgery. But when he comes back, a lot of people feel he's going to fight Bivol, Gail. And shout out to Olaf, the Mighty, who's joined us in the on the show, who's listening to us live. If you have any questions, please drop your questions and comments here in the public YouTube chat. But yeah, The anticipation is Bivol is next, but for me, there's one dangling opponent out there, Gail, and that is David Benavidez, who's the interim WBC champion at 168 pounds. In the post fight, Canelo was asked about a fight with Benavidez in the context of his earlier declaration that he would never fight another Mexican fighter. He was very dismissive of Benavidez. I didn't like that. It's clear, in my opinion, that Benavidez is his best opponent, his toughest opponent at 168 pounds. There's a groundswell of hardcore heads in particular who wants to see that fight. I know they're talking Bivol, but the way that first fight went and how dominant Bivol was, injured hand or not, I don't know if Canelo could beat Bivol, particularly if they run it back and if Bivol having the confidence that comes off of such a victory. For me, I want to see Canelo Benavidez at 68 much more than a Canelo rematch with Bivol at 175. What say you?
The first thing we're going to see is Canelo taking perhaps as much as a year off. And we're not going to see either Bivol or Benavidez in a return fight. He's going to need a tune-up. Who it's going to be, who the hell knows? He'll pick a opponent that's just challenging enough to hopefully make an entertaining fight and give him a spectacular win with the right dance partner. He said today that it is absolutely going to require surgery. It is apparently a soft tissue injury in kind of the sleeve area around the wrist. So soft tissue injuries are very difficult, can be very tricky, especially in a joint, as complicated as the wrist. So I would not count on seeing Canelo again until at the very earliest next May, but more likely next year on Mexican Independence Day. So let's assume we get through surgery, everything turns out okay. He does his tune-up, he looks all right. Who's next? Bivol beats him all day, especially with another year on him, because now Canelo is also starting to show his age. Are we going to look back in months and years and say, that Golovkin 3 fight, that was where we saw Canelo start to decline from his peak? I think that's what we're going to say. That is not to suggest in any way that he's less than an elite fighter. He still is. He's still a huge draw, although pay-per-view numbers are apparently in. We'll talk about that in a second. He's still got a lot to offer, but there's fewer years in front of him than behind him, clearly. And he has stated in interviews and said to my face twice, I'm going to quit when I'm 37. Well, he's 32. He's going to be every bit of 33 before he comes back. Bivol situation, not good for him. No bueno. But I don't know what the legal obligations are to a rematch. I don't know what the rematch clause says. So are we going to see another Deontay Wilder situation where Bivol and his team force the rematch? Maybe. Maybe they give him a tune-up and have it done at that point. Bivol is a younger fighter with a lot less mileage on the tires. Benavidez. Oh, hell yeah. Who wouldn't want to see that? We've all wanted to see that. Benavidez has been talking about it for years. Last time I talked to Benavidez earlier this year, he was asked about it, and he said, listen, everybody knows I want that fight. Everybody knows I want all the guys with the straps. Yeah, it hardly bears repeating. We all know where that is. Canelo not only dismissed Benavidez, it was suggested to him that perhaps he wants them all to fight each other first, everybody remaining below him, and have sort of a tournament to win, the Canelo prize, the opportunity to fight him. And
absolutely not Canelo. No.
But he was asked about that, what does he want to see happen? And his answer was, in English, I don't fucking care what they do. He's still completely in command of what happens to him. Now, what's interesting and offers even more opportunities is he's fought his last fight under contract with the Zone. He is now free agent. He can go back to Matchroom. He can go back to Matchroom. He can go down the street, have a chat with Mr. Al Heyman. Hell, he can even have a chat with Mr. Bob Arum if he wants to. Anybody, Ludabella, Dimitri Salita for that matter, Zanfer. Go over and talk to Mr. Honda in Japan. Canelo is completely a free agent at this point. He has his promoter's license under his own banner, so he gets a little bit of a cut of whatever he does. But we're going to see him disappear for quite a few months, and we're going to have to entertain ourselves with the rest of the talent out there, of which there is plenty. So don't get too anxious, everybody. He's not going to disappear forever, but he did admit he thinks he needs a rest. He's had 4 fights in 11 months. Fair enough.
Future of Canelo post this upcoming surgery to his with his wrist. Daniel, what say you?
Well, he did say he's going to try to make it in May, but like Gail mentioned, this is a tissue injury, so that's probably not going to be the case depending on rehab. So realistically, there's got to be a lot of things that fall into place, because that Benavidez statement, when he talked about it, he never really refuted. He never really backtracked saying, yes, I will fight another Mexican if it's for a world title. He never did that. So that means, still for the most part, that Benavidez, even though he's only half Mexican, is still out of the picture for him. One other person that could be out of the picture for him, and this may actually benefit him on a business standpoint, is Zurdo Ramirez, who I know people want to discount it. I'm not going to discount it. He has a shot against Bivol. And should he beat Bivol, that makes it completely carte blanche for Canelo if they want the rematch to say, okay, let's just fight at 168, fight for my titles. Make you go down to my weight. And that, business-wise, he's fully on the A side there again. But it depends how his rehab goes, because obviously it's not just Benavidez, it's not just Bivol. There's still, if he goes after the other light heavyweights, it means for Turbiev. If he goes and stays in the super middleweight, Jamal Charlo may actually wind up going up. So that's Charlo that's going to step up. And should he get involved in any mandatory situations, that could actually still fall a couple of fighters like Darrell. So it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do as far as opponents. But when it comes to promotion, yeah, it is carte blanche. They are going to, say for Golden Boy, because if you saw Oscar's tweets, he's still a little bit salty. If you watch and you're going to see, I could probably see him pivoting more towards Bob Arum, towards Top Rank, because he knows the organization that they work with. He knows how they handle business. They're in the U.S. And at the end of the day, if the goal is still light heavyweight, Beterbiev, that's the fight to make. So, but it depends everything on how his rehab goes, because he said soft tissue injuries are not a joke. So we have to see, and then the rest of the chess board has to play out.
Just shout out to Boxing Republic, who's also checking us out live. We talked about Canelo. Let's transition to Gennady Golovkin. He's 40, right? Didn't look good in this fight, and I can argue, Daniel, he hasn't looked good. Hasn't looked A plus since the second fight with Canelo back 4 years ago. Now, he says he wants to continue on. He's he's intimating that he's going to move back down to 160 pounds. Okay, one, do you think he should continue fighting, or should he call it a day? Two, if he does indeed fight on, um, here's my question. You just mentioned Jamal. You just mentioned Mal Charlo, WBC champion at 160. If Golovkin insists on fighting, why or where is Jamal Charlo on these social media streets, on these boxing streets, calling for a fight with Golovkin? Because based on recent form, Golovkin is vulnerable. He's ready to get. He lost to Canelo. He's ready to be beat again. If I'm Charlo, or if I'm any prominent name at 160 minus Alam Kanuli, and there's kind of cultural issues there concerning both men, given they're from the same country. Uh, where are the big names at 160 in the 24 in the 48 72 hours post this trilogy? Where are they saying, okay, give me a fight with Gennady Golovkin at 160 pounds?
Well, because like I mentioned, when it came to Canelo, Charlo may not be looking at Golovkin as a money fight. He may just be seeing the bigger fish in a Canelo fight, seen as more money, being the big fish. And that makes it a little bit harder for Golovkin if the end goal is to try to fully unify the middleweight division, obviously, because Charlo's still going to be doing what he's going to do. He's either going to have to vacate the belt if he wants to go after Canelo, or he still has to play with the WBC. And then we know he'll never get the WBO as long as Javinik holds it, because Javinik will not fight Golovkin out of those cultural differences in Kazakhstan. He called him, I think he called him, he's the big brother, so I cannot mess with the big brother. So it's one of the main reasons why, one of the most famous reasons why Gennady's brother Max isn't a boxer, even though the reputation has been that he was a much better technical fighter than Gennady in the amateurs, because he was just born a few minutes after Gennady. He had to give up that dream. But it's going to be interesting what Gennady's going to do, because he's already heard the call out from one Chris Eubank. And he apparently gave a thumbs up to that idea.
But who's taking that fight seriously at this point? Come on.
It's not I think at this point, Golovkin realizes it's probably not going to be much more about seriousness. He has 2 belts. He knows he'll have to defend them. But he's at a point now probably where he needs to get the big money fights. He has to essentially make up for those 3 years he lost trying to chase Felix Sturm early in his career. So that's probably where I see Golovkin going, angling for really big money fights, which does take Andrade out of the occasion. Depending on if Ahiman's willing to do it, can throw Charlo out of the equation. So it's a kind of a muddy picture for Gennady at this stage. And like I said, if that's the best that you can see out of Golovkin, if that's the best that we saw on Saturday, there is no shame at all in hanging up the gloves. You are going to get voted into the Hall of Fame. Even if people want to make the claim that you were a dominant champion in the weak era of the division, you were still a pretty dominant champion. Came pretty close to breaking the Bernard Hopkinson's streak for middleweight defenses. And ultimately, you're still a perennial fan favorite. So he can retire in peace and relax. He's made a lot of money. If it's more about prestige, about legacy, yeah, I would probably say he may have to go to Al to try to make a Charlo fight, because I think at this stage, from the looks of it, if you're gonna deal with the Charlos, it doesn't matter unless it's a fully mandatory situation where PBC loses in the purse bid. You have to deal with the PBC.
Gennady Golovkin, Gail. Should he fight on? Should he continue to carry on? Yeah. And if he does, how much of a future does he have left? Truly,
Very little. He's 40. Again, father time, unless you are Bernard Hopkins, who always wins. Um, for Pete's sake, he does not need the money. How much more money can a man
I mean, should
possibly
he made $25
spend?
million for this fight?
How
And that's
much?
just guaranteed. He made 25 guaranteed for this
25.
fight.
Okay, I only heard the 5. Oh, and once everything's added up, it'll be 40. So
Right.
he already has had 3 big money fights with Canelo. He's made plenty of money in his other fights. Once he made a name for himself, he's not a guy who lives crazy large. I think the most expensive car I've ever seen him driving is a BMW sedan, one that I saw him driving for years, mind you. And I would not be surprised if someone like Marcos Maidana, he returns to his home country where that money's going to go a long way. The first phone call he took, and he wasn't even out of the ring after the fight, was from the president of Kazakhstan. Where do you think his next fight's going to be? I think it's going to be a showcase fight for his fans in Kazakhstan. That will earn him a lot of money. They can tee up somebody nominally a professional, make it a very safe fight for him. Everybody knows what's going to happen. I do not see him fighting Charlo. You know, he did say, hey, I'm still a champion at middleweight. He made that very clear multiple times. Hey, guys, I'm still a champion. I do think he'll take that out for a spin in a very controlled environment, but he is not going to bang it with any of these young, hungry guys. That's just simply not happening.
I pretty much agree here with you, Gail, that if he has a future, it is not much of a future. Uh, kind of an homage fight, a tribute fight in his home country at Kazakhstan. I didn't think of that option. It kind of makes sense, particularly at this stage of his career. Um, as far as Canelo, for me, I'm a stand on my square about this. That I want to, whenever he returns to the ring, I want to see him against Benavidez. I don't want to see a rematch with Bivol because I just don't. I don't know if he can beat Bivol at this point. Now, if Bivol, let's just say fights Bertobiev, and loses or suffers damage in their fights, and then tries to run it back against Canelo, possibly different. But as it stands right now, as you said, Gail, could Bivol in a rematch beats him all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. Um, we'll keep in contact. We'll keep you updated on the future of both men. But yeah, for those who are checking us out or listening to us live or listening to us late live, we're recapping the trilogy between uh, uh, Canelo and Triple G, and Canelo winning by a unanimous decision. The scorecards, I don't even count that because that's ridiculous. You was going to say
Yeah.
something, Gail?
Yeah, and let me jump in. We do have reports of pay-per-view numbers coming in, somewhat unconfirmed, some of them being reported by Dan Raphael on his Fight Freaks Unite Substack newsletter. The numbers that sources are reporting, but Dan's source is usually pretty good, 550 to 575,000 pay-per-view buys. So it could, when it's all said and done, might hit 600,000. And that would be considered pretty disappointing. Pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
I mean, Canelo's fight with Bivol in May generated 520,000 buys, so a little over 500,000 in the U.S. alone, in the U.S. Um,
Given that, is the popular Canelo on decline?
oh, I think well, I think that yes, that's true, but not as much as pay-per-views are on decline. Pay-per-view numbers, big pay-per-view numbers are not the big pay-per-view numbers of years ago. Too many people stream, too many people, a lot of people took the option of watching this fight in a movie theater, which it was about the price of going to watch a movie for all 4 hours of the um, paid undercard. And that's a smart way to go if you don't want to cough up your 85 bucks or 75 bucks or whatever it was. Actually, it was a one-off 85, which gave you a month of the zones. You'd be able to watch it for another few weeks if you did that. If you were a subscriber, it was 60. But Alvarez's fight with Caleb Plant, which to me was sort of a nothing burger fight, right? That generated 80,000 buys verified. And that was distributed by Showtime. I do think streaming is still a problem for a significant number of people. They just don't stream, especially the old school boxing fans. This is, they'll have their Showtime or their HBO subscription, and even then, there's a lot of chatter about what's going to happen to Showtime under their CBS/Paramount ownership. There is now a bundle available under which Showtime is accessed through your Paramount Plus subscription. Now, Showtime claims they're not going away. I think that is an unfinished sentence. Showtime is not going away yet, but Paramount is now starting to bundle all the CBS properties under Paramount Plus, just like Disney Plus folded in Hulu and ESPN, because people are not subscribing to 15 streaming services. They're not going to do it. It's hurting access. So in my case, you bet I folded Showtime back under my Paramount Plus, which I was already buying, which saved me $10 a month, because for $2 more instead of an independent Showtime um, subscription, I could just get a little slightly bulked up Paramount Plus subscription and dump independent Showtime altogether, which is exactly what I did. So here we are, folks. Seeing pay-per-view numbers just simply decline in general. It's not Canelo's fault. It's the way the marketplace is going. This model is difficult right now, and I'm not sure exactly how we fix it. By the way, the last time Golovkin and Alvarez fought was the last pay-per-view over 1 million buys. So there you go. Now, Wilder Fury 3 generated more revenue because the prices were higher, 4 years later or 3 years later. So, that's, we can all do the math.
On the undercard, Daniel, um, Jesse Bam Rodriguez made his return to the ring. For folks who do not know, Bam Rodriguez has been one of the more positive stories in 2022. Big brief backdrop here. Bam was a highly ranked challenger at 108 pounds in early 2022 when he got the call on 6 days' notice to fight Carlos Quadras for a vacant WBC belt at 115. His Bam's camp gamble took the fight. Rodriguez proved their gamble positive, fruitful, as he outboxed Quadras to win the belt. In his first title defense, he scored an impressive stoppage win over Teresa Rungwa side. Returned to the ring once again on the undercard. On this card, to fight Israel Gonzalez. Gonzalez, a former multiple-time world title challenger, and give credit to Gonzalez, who made Bam work for this fight. Rodriguez had difficulty getting to Israel Gonzalez early on in this fight, but as the rounds carried on, Bam found the necessary combinations to to pull ahead from midpoint fight onward. There were a couple of occasions where he landed low, had a point taken away from him, but overall, Bam won the decision, won the fight by decision. Tough fight. I look at it as a learning experience for Bam. Your thoughts on how Bam performed? Do you think that it was? Do you also think that this, in the end, long term, kind of served him well because it just showed him that not everything is going to be easy. Some nights he's going to have to put in real work, going to have to really use his boxing brain and kind of grind it out.
This was a pretty interesting fight to see because it got messy a little bit of times. There were low blows. Bam did get deducted a point for low blows, I think. And when you start watching it a second time, you're reminding yourself that this is the same Giga that gave Chocolatito a little bit of a problem when they fought. And you saw also the size disparity. We have to remember, Bam started this year at 108 pounds. And he's still growing into his own body, but you could tell the size difference that it's still gonna be a little bit of an issue for him to overcome depending on the fighter. Now, this was a situation where the styles make the fights. It made him work for it a little bit, especially as Israel wasn't really going down that much to the body shots of Bam. And it's a good experience for him to learn. I agree that it shows that not every opponent is going to lay down for your offense, and you're going to have to make adjustments and really quick ones during the fight and not get frustrated when things can get a little bit messy. Because there was a good amount of situations where, like I said, there were some low blows being landed on both sides. So this was a good lesson when it came to Bam, but it does also a little bit add to the credence to what his team was saying after they beat Quadras. They said they had chatter of, we may just go back down to 108 pounds because the size disparity is still there. And until he grows into it, the kid's 22, so he'll definitely grow into it. Until he fully grows into it, it may present him a little bit of a problem. And sometimes you may face a fighter that is too big for you to overcome, not much skill-wise, but as far as toughness. And that sometimes can let you win the fight when you're a young fighter. But Bam pulled it through. Probably cinched his ticket for Fighter of the Year in a lot of circles. We'll have to see. And we're going to have to see how his team is going to move forward on this, because 115, like I said, it is the money division, but I probably at this stage wouldn't put him against Gallo or against Chocolatito at this stage after Saturday.
You mentioned, Daniel, that you said that in a lot of folks' eyes, it clinches Bam for Fighter of the Year in 22. Let's stop right there. I was going to talk about the future for Bam, but let's stop right there and talk about this and get the conversation started with you, Gail. They asked him that question in 2020. They asked him that question, after the fight, and he's basically said, yeah, he believes that he deserves to be Fighter of the Year. Simply, I'm going to ask a simple 2 words here. Does he? Is he? I know he's in the running. I concede that, but is he above Devin Haney, who became undisputed lightweight champion, dominating Cambosos? Is he above Mel Charlo, who stopped Castano to become undisputed junior middleweight champion? Is he above Katie Taylor in one of the in one of the most significant fights, the more high profile fights of the year, her dramatic split decision win over Serrano, packed building at MSG, it lived up to expectations in a banner year for women. Is Bam Fighter of the Year? I'm not so sure.
Well, it's only September, so we all need to calm down. Is Bam Fighter of the Year? Bam is Fighter of the Year if Bivol loses to Zurdo. If Bivol beats Zurdo, I think that he's got a line on being Fighter of the Year after having beaten both Canelo and Zurdo Ramirez. That's a significant accomplishment. It really is. The circumstances around Bam give him a really good shot at this because he is so young. He took these fights on very little notice. He went up a weight division to do it. He beat established champions. It is no doubt a significant accomplishment that we didn't see coming. So some of the storyline feeds into this as well. I don't think, however, despite the fact that he is penciled in without an opponent at this point for the undercard of the Estrada Chocolatito 3 fight on December 3rd, I think it might be a smart idea for him to sit it out. Now, they probably are not going to put an extremely tough opponent against him. And the idea is that somewhere down the road, Bam would fight the winner of that fight. But Bam and Chocolatito are both promoted by Tycoon Promotions, Mr. Honda. Roman Gonzalez is like a son to Mr. Honda. He is not. I mean, let me just watch my lips, everybody. Mr. Honda is not going to put Roman in front of Bam Rodriguez. That is not going to happen. If Estrada wins, that's a different story. And I do think those two are headed for a fight down the road. But I don't think it would hurt Bam really to sit it out. He got plenty of exposure, even with low pay-per-view buys uh, over the weekend. And that was a good development fight for him. It was a lot harder than everyone expected. But boy, it is such a pleasure to watch him operate, to watch his punch selection, to watch the way he pivots and moves. Everybody who is training in the gym today should go pull video and watch the way he moves. And he is such a matter of factly confident young man. When he says, I have superior skills, he says it like the sky is blue. It's just simply a fact. He's not bragging. He's not making a big deal out of it. It just, this is reality and he's stating it. And I appreciate that. But, you know, folks, he's 22 years old. He does not need to be in a hurry. I know he wants to fight all of the, you know, four horsemen of the super flyweight division as the next generation coming up. I'm not sure he absolutely needs to do that to seal his legacy moving forward in the future. But we'll see. But clearly for me, with several months left to go and several developments, mainly with B-ball needing to play out, I think your three contenders for Fighter of the Year are Katie Taylor, or perhaps even Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano as a joint Fighter of the Year, Bam or B-ball. And I'd be happy with any of them, truly.
Let's go to some comments here. Boxing Republic in the public chat here says, "Go Bam." He also says that I was rooting for Bam, but you know what I wouldn't have been mad at a draw. Israel did well. I know during the live broadcast on the zone, the scorecards were a little bit wider, or two of them, I should say, were pretty wide for Bam. The third, I think, was like 114, 113, 1 point because of the point deducted for Bam. They pretty much the ringside team felt that Bam needed those last two rounds to win the fight. So I could see why you believe that. Boxing Republic, I had Bam winning by 3 points, 8-4. 3 rounds because of the point deduction, but a lot of people felt that it was a pretty close fight, competitive, very competitive, um, at the very least. Go to you quickly. Gail kind of mentioned the future of Bam. She says she doesn't want to see him return to the ring. There's an option on the table, a possible option of him fighting on the undercard of the third fight between Gallo and Chocolatito, December 3rd. Let me play a bit of devil's advocate here, and I'm gonna use 1998 as a reference point. Did a Twitter space for Three Kings Boxing earlier this afternoon with Bo, who you've heard who's been on this podcast numerous times. Shout out to the Three Kings Boxing crew, 3KB, 3kingsboxing.com, your source of pure unadulterated boxing entertainment. The entire Three Kings Boxing staff, 2K, aka Prodigy, head of Three Kings Boxing, Bo, who's the head of media relations, and senior writer. Myself, I'm a senior writer there. Shout out to the other senior writers, Bakar Israel, aka Big Who, Red, who does a lot of the editing and a lot of work, along with 2K on 3kingsboxing.com. This was a topic on our Twitter space, and my thing was, Daniel, the reason I use 1998 as kind of playing a devil's advocate is because I'm talking about 2 fighters specifically during that year, and my dates may be off, so don't quote me exact, but Bam is 22, right? Turned 22 earlier this year. 21-year-old Floyd fought in April of 1998, fought in June in 1998 on ESPN, turns around, fights in October, beating Gennaro Hernandez to win his first world title, WBC version at 130, early October, and then turns around a couple of months later in December, fights Angel Manfredi, stops him in early December, mid-late December. That scenario. At the same time during that year, you had Shane Mosley, who was IBF lightweight champion. He made a mandatory defense in February on HBO After Dark, came back around, fought in May on HBO After Dark, turns around, fights 6 weeks against John Molina, stopped him, turns around 6 weeks later, fights in late June, stops a guy on, I think it was FX, turns around, fights in September on TNT, and then turns around and fights in November on HBO, stopping Jesse James Leha, fighting 5 months 5 times in a span of 9 months. What is the difference between 1998 Floyd and Mosley in comparison to a 22-year-old Bam now, who fought in February, fought in June, in February, I think it was in April, fights in June, I think it was, against Swiss Sakai, turns around, fights in September, and thinking about fighting in December. What's the difference between that scenario with Floyd and Sugar Shane in 98 and Bam Rodriguez in 2022?
The biggest difference probably would be the pool of candidate of fight of opponents that you can get in that time span, where you can really hone your skills, and the weight of expectations, because we knew at that point, at 1998, we knew that Floyd was the goods. He was not upsetting any apple carts, winning in 1998. And Mosley, we know he flew a little bit under the radar until he got those fights with Oscar. He was able to build his resume, and without the major hype machines behind him at the time, but still build a quality resume. Bam upset the apple cart. Granted, yeah, the two of them were a little bit older. He this year took out 2 of the supposed 4 horsemen of the Superfly division currently, and did it with remarkable ease compared to the other fighters in Quadras and Rungvisai. That puts a heavy burden, heavy expectations on a young fighter, and putting him on the undercard for that fight. You start seeing the building process. Remember, that's how Golden Boy built Canelo for a lot of years. Oscar put Canelo on the undercard of Floyd Mayweather fight, building him up, steady up to the point where he decided, let's put him against Floyd. You could see the same wheels in motion being positioned, where you put Bam on the undercard. Okay, these 2 fight. Depends on who wins Chocolatito. If it's Chocolatito, like Gil mentioned, Mr. Honda's not going to let those 2 fight each other. He's just not. And if it's Gallo winning, Gallo will do it. Gallo is proven to be ready, willing, and able to fight anybody at this stage of his career. So that's the burden that you put under, especially with a kid like I mentioned, and Bam that's still really attempting to physically grow in the division. That's the burden that you put in if you put him on the undercard. If he chooses to rest, that can work. That works as well. Like I said, you could come in fresh, get your early title defense, early 2023, and then slowly start building towards whoever the winner was of the trilogy of Gallo and Chocolatito. To me, that's the key difference, because Floyd, we knew what he was. Shane, if you paid attention, you knew what he was. Nobody, at least in this, if you said 115 pounds in the beginning of this year, nobody would have told you in January 2022 that one of the top champions and one of the persons that toppled 2 of the 4 horsemen would be Bam Rodriguez. You expected those 4 to fight each other, and that kid didn't let it happen. That's the key difference.
Except for Robert Garcia, who's been telling us that Bam Rodriguez was the best fighter in his stable for several years now. We kept saying, huh? What? Really? Is that good? Michael, though, I'm looking back at that 98 string by Floyd. First of all, he did not go up a weight division. He was at 130 for all of those fights. So he was in the same division the whole time. And, I'm looking at some of those opponents, and they're not exactly world beaters in 98. Sam Gerard, Mello, Cuello, Pep, 6 losses, 7 losses. Yeah. So a little bit different story. And let's think about the style, even back then, that Mayweather employed versus Bam Rodriguez. Floyd, even at his busiest, was not a banger. Bam's name says it all. Bam is a banger. He's banging with these guys. He's in there. He's in a phone booth. It's a lot different sort of wear and tear. I would also argue that Floyd's amateur accomplishments and training allowed him throughout his career, and it got more so as older he got. He knew how to avoid getting hit and not get hit. For a lot of people, they didn't love it, but that was Floyd's style. He was enormously skilled at it. Nobody did it better. But the wear and tear is a really, really different sort of thing. So I'm not sure we can draw an equivalent here. And I'm not sure we need to, because we certainly know more about what boxing demands 24 years later And why would we force maybe one of the most talented fighters of the current generation into a somewhat meaningless fight just because we want him back out there? I'm not sure that's a real bright idea. And if he can gain more career longevity against truly worthy opponents by sitting this out in December, I'm all for it. Now, I love him. I love to see him. I've gotten to see him ringside now twice this year. He's phenomenal. He is phenomenal. And he's more impressive in person. If you listening have a chance to get a ticket where he's on the card, do what it takes. But if we need to bypass this in December, I'm perfectly okay with the main event without Bam in this case.
And we'll keep you updated on the future developments for Bam Rodriguez. Going to go to preview some fights here, but going to give you Gail and Daniel the space. Any news or interesting tidbits that you want to talk about before we start previewing some fights here?
Let us point out that we still have no official announcement about a Spence Crawford fight. No official announcement. In theory, it would have been 2 months, 8 weeks from yesterday. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, they need to get on the ball in terms of that fight. Is what we're recording this live on September 20th. We talked about, last week that they had kind of come to an agreement for a fight on November 19th. No contract has been signed, no announcement as of this recording. So you're basically 2 months away, 8 weeks, right? So yeah, if they're gonna do this, they need to hurry up and make it public, because time is wasting. You was gonna say something, Daniel?
Yeah, I was gonna say. Remember what I said last week? It's in when it's in the hands of the lawyers, anything can happen. You're at the 5-yard line. I'm actually gonna use an analogy from football. What happened to the Baltimore Ravens when they were trying to go up 14-0 against the Dolphins this week? Early in the first quarter, they were at the goal line, 4th down. They wound up fumbling the ball, and they lost the ball on downs. That's something, unfortunately, that can easily happen when you're this close to making a big fight. And unfortunately, the time crunch is one of the more annoying aspects when it comes to how PBC does things. They tend to really push promotion almost up to the last feasible minute where you can actually generate buzz. But this is one of the fights where you can't have that happen. This needs as big of a window for promotion as much as it does for training. And the fact that we don't have an announcement now should scare people as far as when it comes to promotion of this fight, if it happens. Because at this stage, you may want to push past November. You may want to push towards December. You have to give certain fights room to breathe. And this is one of those fights.
And it's certainly possible that we'll still get the fight. I'm not saying we won't. But looking at some of these pay-per-view numbers, which we've just been talking about, knowing the money that's going to be necessary to get this fight over the finish line, it wouldn't surprise me if Showtime and CBS as their parent company and Paramount and so forth, Fox is more or less out of the mix. However, for this case, they may be looking to the model in which the Wilder Fury fight was promoted via the end of the NFL season, the playoffs, and the Super Bowl, and scheduled after that. That's what we might see happen. Wouldn't be surprised at all if we just simply get it delayed to that first quarter of 2023.
Read a comment here from my apologies if I pronounced your name wrong. Gorgoruga, in the live show chat, he says Bam perhaps overtrained, maybe fighting too soon after Rungle's side, insufficient rest time. It could be the fact that he came back to the ring a little bit too soon. Could be the fact that Gonzalez was better than a lot of folks anticipated. Probably a combination of both. Let's move on here to start previewing some fights here that's taking place later on this week on the 23rd. On ESPN, the return of unified 130-pound champion Shakur Stevenson, who last time we saw him in the ring, dominant performance against Oscar Valdez to unify the WBCBO junior lightweight belts. Returns to the ring to fight Robson Conceicao. Conceicao, many people remember him for his controversial loss to Valdez September last year. Gail, and am I wrong here for thinking even though Valdez was the high profile fight for Shakur, Conceicao could actually give Stevenson a more difficult fight because of his boxing ability, because of his pedigree. He's more on par with Shakur from a technical standpoint. Stevenson is a better defensive fighter, and there's some questions about Conceicao's chin, in my opinion. But dare I say, Shakur is the favorite for good reason, but Conceicao could actually give him a more difficult scrap.
I think Conceicao will make him work a little harder, but Stevenson makes himself so difficult to hit, so difficult to find. It's been interesting hearing somebody like Jamel Herring talk about being in the ring with Stevenson, being intellectually a student of the game, very bright as far as an analyst, and that's why he's doing so well doing ringside analysis for Top Rank. And it's simply being unable to find Stevenson in the ring. He just couldn't get to him. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Stevenson can play keep away all day, can run rings around Conceicao with his skills. Um, I think Conceicao will give it a very good effort. I think he's willing to take chances, which is good. We didn't really get to see that a lot this weekend, so that'll be refreshing. Note that it's a Friday night card with one of Top Rank's top talents. That speaks to me more about his opponent. Conceicao has been a very good soldier for Top Rank. He's faced a lot of people. He works hard for the boss. I think this is a reward for him. Um, he has a chance. Every fighter has a chance, uh, realistically. But would I advise anyone to take any sort of bet involving him? Oh, hell no. Your money's, you work too hard for that money.
On the undercard, Daniel, you got a slew of some promising prospects. You got Keyshawn Davis, who was the Olympic silver medalist at the Tokyo Games. Bruce Carrington, Jahid Tucker, Henry LeBron, and whatnot. Of that group of prospects, which one are you looking for most forward to watching? I'll just say for myself, I Davis is the more high profile one fighter because of his Olympic exposure. But the more I see Bruce Carrington fight, the more I like him. Big featherweight. I think he has real potential. If he continues to develop, he could be a potential force at 126 or 130. But the question to you, Daniel, of the group of prospects who's fighting this weekend, do you have your eye on one in particular?
I'm with you on that front. I'm have more of my eye on Keyshawn. You've seen how he's adjusting a lot more to the pro style and a very, very good pace. So that's the one I'm keeping an eye on with a little bit more of a glance at LeBron. Well, I pronounced it correctly, LeBron. But that is a very, very deep prospect pool the Top Rank has at their disposal in this around these weight classes. But Keyshawn is probably going to be, if you're going to have a star in the undercard, it's going to be him.
That card again, second place on the 23rd in Newark, New Jersey, as a hometown fight for Shakur Stevenson, defending his unified belts against former featherweight world title challenger Robin Conceicao on the 24th Gale. Interesting heavyweight bout, WBO interim belts. Joe Joyce versus Joseph Parker. I pinned an article for Three Kings Boxing. You can check it out on threekingsboxing.com. And this is about Parker. Uh, he's been a guy, the talent is there, but you question his desire, his passion, whether he has real fire in the belly. Now, this is his third fight working with Andy Lee. He's been part of the Tyson Fury camp. He swears that this is his best training camp, and you're going to see kind of a new guy in the ring. Am I wrong to question that? Does a leopard ever change its spots? Uh, he needs to bring intensity. He needs that fire in the belly against a Joe Joyce who, for those who've seen him fight, he likes to come forward. He got a ramrod of a jab, one of the hardest left jabs in the division, and he's in your face all night long. He's tough as an oak, and he hits hard. Just ask Antonio Dubois, who gave him his only defeat. Um, Parker at his best can win, but the indifferent Parker that we saw against Junior Fa, the Joseph Parker, who could have and should have done more, and I think could have pulled out the win against Dillian White a few years ago. If that one returns, I don't know if he can last fully against the young, hungry Joe Joyce, who even though he's older, uh, uh, he, excuse me for saying this, Gail, my apology, but he fights in many ways like a man's man. He's a truth tester. And if Parker doesn't bring it, he's going to really test Parker, not just physically, but in terms of spiritually and mentally as well.
I agree with you 100%. No apology necessary. Joe Joyce's greatest skill is the fact that he never stops coming. He's relentless. He reminds me of a horror movie zombie, who's coming at you kind of just step by step by step. And you think, God damn, you people, just outrun that damn thing. Just get moving. But he never slows down. The engine never quits. He's just at you all the time. He never seems to gas out. He's found an incredibly smart way to manage his output during a fight. And when somebody's trying to get at him and almost encouraged to try to go after him and stop him early and get him out of there because he doesn't present as tremendously scary, suddenly they don't have any gas left in the tank, and Joyce is like, I can do this all night. I can pack a lunch. I'm here. And I think it discourages his opponents. They just lose the will to live. They really do. And I'm with you on Parker. I've watched some of the interview video, behind the scenes stuff of this camp. Parker is he's a tremendously talented individual beyond the boxing ring. He can easily go into acting or music or anything he wants to do after fighting. He's enormously popular as just a general celebrity in Australia and New Zealand. I'm not sure that's the best formula for focusing in the ring because he's got options. And he seems incredibly happy in this camp and relaxed. And it, those aren't the fighters that put out in the ring when it's all said and done, because he's a little too happy. Guys need to suffer in training camp. They need to want to make all of that effort pay off, because they'll be damned if they lose after suffering that bad. He's just having a really good time, and I think he will give a very good effort. I don't think he'll roll over. I don't think he'll be crushed like a bug. That's not how Joyce operates. He just wears you down until he just grounds you down, until there's nothing left. And that's what I see him doing. And it is interesting, we think of him as still a fairly new fighter. He is not a young man to be at this stage of his career. He's, quite a bit into his 30s. But the way he fights so steadily and relentlessly, he never revs the engine. He never revs that tachometer way, way, way up there. And that may allow him to last a little bit later into his years than your average bang it out fighter. I am really intrigued by this fight. It might not be real exciting, thrill a minute fight, but I'm very intrigued to see it.
Fight's going to take place on ESPN Plus, and on the undercard here, Daniel, you have women's featherweight unification bout, the return of Amanda Serrano. I mentioned her when talking about Katie Taylor as a possible candidate for Fighter of the Year. Gail gave us the option of left the option on the table of naming both Serrano and Taylor kind of co-women's fighters, co-fighters of the year, putting them together. Well, Serrano, she's dropping back down to featherweight. Fighting IBF champion Sarah Mahfoud, and I was side eyeing this when this fight was first mentioned, because it came in and around the time that her her team was suggesting that a rematch that Katie Taylor moved down in weight to fight her. I felt that was ridiculous. I didn't take it, I just felt it was ridiculous. But anyway, she's returning to 126. I think she can't be beat at that weight. Not that Mahfoud is a bad fighter, but just that Amanda Serrano, she is that elite at that weight. Convinced me that Sarah Mahfoud has more than a small chance of garnering what would be considered a leading candidate for upset of the year.
Oh, that one's actually pretty tough. The main thing, and this has always been my worry with Serrano, and with the way that she moves between weight classes, is eventually that can catch up with you. Because she, like I said, she not only does boxing, she does MMA. And she does it in multiple weight classes. I think the smallest I've seen her is bantamweight. And then we see her go all the way up to lightweight, 100 or even 140 pounds. That's a lot of fluctuation when it comes to weights. And that's mainly the key that to me, that if you're gonna hurt Serrano, if you're gonna hurt Amanda, if you're gonna have a chance to win, that has to catch up with her at this point. And probably also the same thing, bitter feeling that she won against Taylor, but the cards weren't there. And she may go out to be something to prove. Sometimes that happens. Fighters go out there wanting to prove something, and they want to prove something else. But I don't see much of that happening. Like I said, my main worry is the weight. Eventually, unfortunately, the way Amanda moves around the weights is going to catch up with her. And it may be this fight, it may be later down the line, but sooner or later it's going to happen.
And that fight, along with Joyce and Parker, is going to take place on the 24th on ESPN Plus. over in Manchester, England. Also on that same day, Daniel, I believe, Gail, I think this is going to take place on the Zone. Correct me if I'm wrong. An interesting battle at 154. We mentioned a couple of episodes back, we talked about Natasha Jonas, who used to campaign at 130 and 135. She made the jump from 35 to 54. Um, if if Taylor is not Women's Fighter of the Year, I could make an argument that Jonas is a serious runner up because she's not only moved up to win a belt at 154 pounds, she's now unified champion at 154 pounds, right? Well, Terri Harper is attempting to do the same feat. Harper, last time we saw her in the ring, she got knocked out on her feet, literally, by Alicia Baumgartner, losing her WBC 130-pound belt in the process. She's decided to move up to 140, 154. And quick comment here before we move on. Olaf says in the chat he got Joyce winning against Joseph Parker. Many people do as well. But back to Terri Harper, she's made the decision to move up from 130 to 154 to fight Hannah Rankin. Rankin putting her WBA 154-pound strap on the line. Harper, from the looks of her in videos and whatever, checking out her social media stuff on Twitter and IG, there's not there's no fat on her. So that says to me that she had a lot of difficulty in getting down to the 130-pound division. My problem is, Gail, I can't get that Baumgartner fight out of my head. I can't get the way of the fact that she was out on her feet and she's facing a Rankin who can crack as well. Just ask Clarissa Shields. She's talked about how hard Hannah Rankin hits, and she felt Rankin's power in their fight with each other. Um, in a skill matchup, Harper can outbox her. My question is, does she still have that Bumgardner fight in her mind? And what happens when someone who has the power of Rankin really catches her and catches her clean? How will she react?
Listen, she may see that knockout as such an anomaly that it doesn't bother her, that it's not on her radar. Imagine what we all thought after Juan Manuel Marquez flattened Manny Pacquiao. I thought the man was dead. I legitimately thought he killed Manny Pacquiao. Everyone in the arena, his wife, Bob Arum, we all thought the man was dead. And
like Jim Ross, Daniel, and old school WWE commentary, he killed him. He killed him.
Yeah, exactly. She may just see this as a fluke. It was a freaky knockout. I mean, it's so memorable because it was so unusual. But because of that, Harper may say, listen, that was just a freaky thing. That's like, lightning splitting a tree in half. It's not likely to happen again. She just caught me. It's not like I was outfought for all 10 rounds of a fight. I made a mistake. She caught me. It is what it is. Let's move on. But moving up from 130 to 154, especially after that, oh boy, if you are curious about that, if you weigh 200 pounds, this isn't going to work for you. But I'm sitting at super flyweight, okay, everybody, or I can make light flyweight easy. If I carried around 24 extra pounds, it wouldn't take me a whole long time walking around in my house with a weighted vest on with 25 extra pounds to think, damn, this is a lot. And it's going to slow you down. She is a tall woman. She's 5'8". I think she's listed at 5'8.5", actually. She is in her mid-20s. It just shows what some of the top women, the elite women fighters, need to do to get good matchups. Clearly, she and her camp see something in Rankin that tells them she's right for the picking. She is a little bit older, although for women's fighters, a 32-year-old is not that unusual. She has lost 5 fights. She's 12-5. She has been stopped. So they see something. I'm not sure I see it, but clearly Harper's team does. This is either going to prove to be a stroke of genius or a really big mistake. We're going to know on Saturday.
Indeed, and I think we're going to start to shut things down on that note. I want to, if you like what you heard this evening, please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're checking us out on YouTube. If you're checking us out on podcast platforms like Spotify, Google Podcasts, especially Apple Podcasts, show us some love there. Please leave a review, 5-star review. We'll get read on the show. Shout out to everybody in live chat. Olaf, again, Gorgaruga, my apologies if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Boxing Republic, thank you for your comments. I'll go around the panel here, begin the show with ladies first, going to end the show with ladies first. As always, Gail from Communities Digital News and nyfight.com. For folks who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media, you do media training on the side. But for those who want to catch you out occasionally on TMZ Live, let the folks know where they can find you.
And I thank everybody who greeted me in Las Vegas. It was a wonderful thing to see everybody there. The fights may not
Tino Maidana in the building, looking like a boss.
Maidana was absolutely the king of the weekend. We first spotted him early in the week at one of the small bars in the MGM. He was besieged in a good way by the fans. He endlessly posed for photos. He signed what had to be hundreds of autographs. That man is living his best life.
Sunglasses down, dressed in all white, looking too cool for school.
Oh, he was dressed up in the high fashion silk printed shirt. It was hot as hell out there at the weigh-in. He looked as cool as ever. Yeah, we all want to live like that. But the fans were terrific. If they don't get their money's worth in the venue, they get their money's worth enjoying themselves. And it was apparently last weekend the biggest weekend Las Vegas has had in years, even well before the pandemic. One of their big music festivals was in town. The Aces won their championship and came home. Las Vegas's first professional league championship. Very impressive. So it was just a big weekend for everybody. And I thank everyone who greeted me, from the section leader at the T-Mobile Arena, who turned out to be a great guy, the guy selling the liquor, making the rounds, all the commission folks and professionals, and my fellow journalists who were there. And it's a shame that Daniel Yu and Michael Yu weren't there to join us, but you'll be there next time. So you find me at nyfights.com, and certainly I love it when you come and say hi and chat about boxing with me if you see me in person. I'll see you at the fights.
I go to you, Daniel. Daniel from For Boxing News, and the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk. One last comment here before I go on. Gorgaruga says, I think Harper was weight drained in that Baumgartner fight, looked nervous doing the ring walk. She certainly, based on recent photos of hers, yeah, she may have been weight drained. So again, it's a very, very interesting fight. Very, very interesting fight. Still, it's a lot of weight for her to put on in just one fight, nothing interim, no tune-ups or anything like that. I go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk pro wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
All right, folks, you can hit me on Twitter, Rawkus99, RAWKUZ99, to catch me on there. And I agree. It's a drastic weight jump for Harper. It's tough to watch somebody get their brain reset while standing up and then watching their next fight. Who knows, though? She could pull through.
Indeed. And for those who want to talk boxing, music, and fitness with me, you know what it is on social media. Brother JR76 on Twitter for those who want to talk boxing music, fitness, and fragrance on IG. You can check me out on Brother JR SC. As I said at the beginning of this recording, for those who want to check out all information about Pound for Pound Box Report, please check out the site, p4pboxreport.com. If you wish to email us questions, comments, suggestions, you can do so, P4P Boxing Report. P4P Boxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll see links to where to check us out all over the social media realm, be it Facebook, link to the YouTube channel, links to the IG, Twitter, Tumblr page, as well as links to where to check out the show on all podcast platforms, all RSS feed, all feeds that are RSS distributed, links to where you can donate, and also links to Beachbody on Demand. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Harper and her fight with Rankin. We will do a recap of Joseph Parker and Joyce, or do a recap of Serrano, Sarah Mahfoud, and we will also do a recap of Stevenson and Robinson Conceicao. The week of the first looks like it's going to be very, very light. If there are any significant bouts happening during that week, we will let you know. So yeah, this has been episode 378 of Pound for Pound Box Report 1-2. Once again, I thank everybody who joined us live. Again, if you're checking us out live or later date at YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. For Gil from NY Fights and Communities Digital News, from Daniel for Boxing News and the Inscriber, I am your host, Michael. We will see you guys next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night. And last before we leave, thoughts and prayers to all who are suffering as a result of this recent hurricane in Puerto Rico. Most of the country is without power. Severe damage to that nation. Again, thoughts and prayers to everybody who are suffering right now as a result of the hurricane. Again, episode 378 of Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will see you next time.